Congratulations to this year's Grand Award winner, the NYS&W Bicycle and Pedestrian Shared Use Path. Built for railroad transport around 1910, this 5-mile section has laid abandoned for almost 40 years. During that time, there has been interest in repurposing the right-of-way into a usable public resource. Many local, county, state, and federal assistance assets were in favor of the project, but the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act helped make the project a reality. The project featured many street crossing upgrades, a swamp area elevated portion constructed on piles with precast pier caps and span elements, an extensive river crossing bridge rehabilitation, as well as hardscape and landscape features. Various concrete mixes were utilized, including ultra-high performance mixes in critical areas. Design and placement logistics allowed for environmental compliance and an aesthetic experience for users.
So we've been in talk with NYS&W, the railroad, since the 90s to try and orchestrate a Rails to Trails project. I joined the project roughly 2017 to get through DEP permitting. There was quite a few challenges with this because there's lots of wetlands, we're spanning a river here.
Every step of the way, I'm in constant communication with Danielle. We've gotten insight from Morris County Engineering and the vision of Morris County Parks on what they wanted to see out of this project.
So this job was actually bid twice. Both bids were rejected, then they came back about a year later, and we were low bidder.
There wasn't much drainage involved, which I was a little surprised because this area flooded a lot.
We had to remove every single foot of rail, and then we had to remove every component of this bridge that's behind us.
The bike path is 5 miles long, so we kind of worked into the middle here where we have this bridge that goes over the Pompton River.
It's a phenomenal planning feat. There is the rehabilitation of this bridge, which had not been inspected probably maybe ever.
But all of that was local stone, and there were some big chunks of aggregate that you would never find nowadays.
Once the rehabilitation started on the piers, we found trees growing up in the pier caps. So, and there was nothing I've ever seen before, and just the roots penetrating throughout the majority of the top.
So we had to get a subcontractor to chip everything out, and then they put new concrete on top of it.
They sandblasted and pretty much refurbished the whole bridge. There was some new steel put in.
So we had new bearings that were installed, and they tied into the existing abutment and the piers. So they're big rectangular footings basically for the steel.
Everything pretty much stayed in place. They just had to do a little jacking on the bridge, jack up some of the beams and the girders, but there was no removal of the bridge.
Rehabilitation is always interesting that way.
And then we poured the bridge deck. We had a pump set up on this side of the bridge here. We did one side and then we did the other.
There's 2 landscaping walls behind that had to protect the slope from washing out.
The contractor did a very nice job. It probably looks better now than it ever did.
It's definitely unusual because there's so many components within one project itself. A rehab of an existing bridge, an elevated trail that had piles installed that was made out of precast concrete units, and also just grade work in general.
This has been a pedestrian project, but some of the requirements have been based on the federal guidelines. So a lot of the design does go above and beyond. We want to make sure that the bridges are going to be here for years to come.
The biggest challenges was, I would say, access when we did the elevated trail. It tends to get flooded there, which would put us for a couple of weeks out of work at a time. And then we'd have to be aware of the forecast if there was any tidal issues or heavy rains coming in. It would pretty much put a stop to the project for several weeks.
Prior to the project, there was underground boring drills in several locations along the elevated trail. Of course, that's not going to give you an exact view of what's underneath, but it did show that about 25 to 30 feet down, there was a stronger layer that would support the piles.
And it was kind of challenging because it was through a wetland. So we had to be working on timber mats. Sometimes we were floating.
The piles were struck and the blow count needed to be at least 2 blows per inch.
Those were filled with concrete up to a certain level, and then a rebar cage was installed 3 or 4 feet into the pier cap, sticks out another 3 feet.
And then we had the precast units delivered, and then we installed them and set them in place.
And there were 150 pier caps, about the same amount of slabs. And we did a closure pour for the concrete pier cap with UHPC.
UHPC is all about particle packing. So we take out all the 3/4 inch stone, all the stuff you see in the 5,000 PSI, and we substitute it with thousands of grains of different size sands, and it mechanically changes, it eliminates fulcrums that you get when you get 2 stones together. They're like 2 levers, which can facilitate cracking. It makes it much denser. It decreases the air to below 2%. We certainly have binders, and we have aggregate, but in my case, I use smaller high SO2 aggregate, really pure stuff. It's certainly more expensive, but we're now talking about shelf lives of over 100 years.
The UHPC was very innovative. I've never worked with it before. I didn't realize that if you kept agitating it, it doesn't cure.
So they opted to mix it in their yard, transport it to the project, transfer it into a bucket, and then crane it into position as to disturb nature as the least amount as possible.
There was also the overlay that was put on top of the pier caps so that the slabs would transition from one to another without any bumps or anything like that. And then also there's a small prefabricated bridge that connected to the elevated trail that goes over the Packanack Brook. That was also HPC.
We're so thankful that the organizations have acknowledged this project.
Everybody went out of their way. Sometimes you get a lot of testosterone on job sites and everybody's an expert. Well, in this case, we parked all the egos and machismo off to the side, and it was just this wonderful orchestration of a very talented contractor working with a material they weren't familiar with, but learning and dialing in.
Very nice honor for us,
This is definitely a great opportunity. There's definitely a lot of concrete that was involved in this. There's definitely not your typical like Class B for concrete curbs and concrete sidewalks. So it was definitely a nice mix.
It was a good project for us. Had a lot of fun doing it, a new experience.
The county couldn't have done this without numerous support, and it's been kind of the legacy projects of some of the higher ups, and we're just also thrilled and proud that this is and it's so widely used too. So clearly there was a need.
This is an extensive job, and it came from an old abandoned railroad, which was, not used, to something that people like and they use it every day.
It's been a joy to work on this project.
Congratulations to this year's Grand Award winner, the NYS&W Bicycle and Pedestrian Shared Use Path.